Do you want to know how long a copyright lasts? Do you want to know whether a work that could have been copyrighted was never registered? Do you want to know how to determine whether a copyright was not renewed? Do you want to know the rules for works from different foreign countries? Do you want to find out whether a use you have in mind would constitute fair use under the law? Are you going to deal with a work that has derivative works? These are all subjects in this series of videos. This video is on the difference between published and unpublished works. If you've come to this video without having watched some of the earlier ones, I do recommend that you see the other ones first, as the topic covered in this one is of limited scope. In 1931, Universal Pictures released a feature film entitled East of Borneo. Copies were sent to hundreds, if not thousands, of theaters, and Universal was careful to register a copyright. 5 years later, avant-garde artist Joseph Cornell assembled a collage film made up, mostly, of short sequences from East of Borneo, made silent, and focused mostly on close-ups of the leading lady. And in that the actress was named Rose Hobart, Joseph Cornell called his collage film Rose Hobart. Joseph Cornell showed his film in art galleries. He had only his one original copy, and he did not file copyright to protect his creative decisions. What you are looking at here is from a page of the cumulative copyright catalog that the United States Copyright Office prepared of all copyright registrations from 1912 to 1939. Where the title Rose Hobart would appear alphabetically, there is nothing. Only one of the two films we've discussed is protected by copyright. I wonder if you can guess which one.
Well, I'm going to say that you wouldn't be asking unless it was a trick question.
Yeah, I'm going to assume it's the answer that's not the obvious answer.
Indeed, Universal's film East of Borneo is no longer protected by copyright. Joseph Cornell's collage film Rose Hobart is. Universal's copyright came up for renewal in 1959. At that time, Universal had the option of renewing, and had they done so, as they normally did with their talking feature films, the film would still be under copyright today and would remain under copyright until the year 2026. In a rare instance of Universal failing to maintain one of its copyrights, this one lapsed. Joseph Cornell, with his film Rose Hobart, was subject to a different set of rules. His film was never published. Yes, it was performed, it was shown before audiences, but in the language of the law, it was not published. The wording of the passage defining publication in the various versions of the Copyright Act establishes this. The courts have ruled this way for many, many years. In one case, in 1937, a movie that had limited exhibition, essentially being carted from city to city in its single copy, by its copyright owner and presented in much the same way as a lecture is presented in only one city at any given time, was subject of a lawsuit. This film was judged not to have been published, and the party that had copied it without authorization was found guilty. Paramount was able to use the same principle when it sued, and won, for infringement of its Star Trek copyrights. The Star Trek series had been shown on a broadcast network. There were probably 150 to 200 stations that had broadcast each episode the first night that each of them had been seen, alone, let alone more than 140 stations that had contracted for syndicated reruns. Paramount argued successfully that each of the many prints were in its control. The prints were leased, but not sold. And that made the difference.
How long can someone claim that their work isn't published when years and years go by that they're showing it to lots and lots of people?
You might be surprised. Until there was a change introduced into American law in 1978, there was no limit. What this means is that a participant in the American Revolution could have written his memoirs, then not publish them, put them into a trunk, let them go to his heirs, and then to their heirs, and on down the family tree, and still that manuscript would be covered by copyright. The new version of the Copyright Act, which went into effect in 1978, changed that. It establishes that copyright is based upon the lifespan of the author. A work is protected for the lifetime of the author plus a fixed number of years after that. Right now, it is the life of the author plus 70 years. 70. Needless to say, anyone who died when a witness of the Revolutionary War would have died, which is to say, prior to the 20th century, would have a lifespan which would entitle his unpublished manuscript to no copyright protections whatsoever in 1978. The authors of the new Copyright Act anticipated this, so they established that until the year 2002, previously unpublished manuscripts could be published and would still get some copyright protection, even though otherwise the author had been dead too long to be entitled to any. To read the definition of publication in the current version of the copyright law, you should view the text of the copyright law at the Copyright Office's website, copyright.gov. To view the text of historic versions of the copyright law, visit law.copyrightdata.com and choose from the pull-down menu the versions of the copyright law that you would like to read. Probably the most popular work to arise from this last chance effort to get copyright protection on a very old manuscript is additional material for a very popular work, one that involved a trunk like the one in the previous example. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain has been popular since it was first published in 1885. The book, as Mr. Twain published it, has long been in the public domain. However, in 1990, a long-forgotten trunk was opened, and the result was that all of the portions that Mr. Twain cut from the manuscript prior to publication were now available to his heirs, and these portions could be published. With just 12 years before that year 2002 deadline, efforts were made, and in 1996, a new edition of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn was put out on the market. The material unique in that version, the material that had been deleted in all previous editions, enjoyed copyright, and because of provisions that had gone into effect in 1978 allowed for additional copyright protection beyond the year 2002, provided that publication took place no later than 2002, these unique passages remain under copyright in the year 2009 when this recording is made. It can be tricky, even funny, examining how different parts of the same work contain both published and unpublished material, with some portions having entered the public domain, with copyright expiration or lack of renewal, and other portions continuing to enjoy copyright as unpublished work. The copyrightdata.com website has this frame from a You Bet Your Life episode where part of the image was published within a Best of Groucho episode, which has gone into the public domain, whereas the outer portions of the image were cropped out of Best of Groucho and thus continues to enjoy copyright as unpublished work. Earlier in this video, I mentioned that East of Borneo had not been renewed. To find out more about copyrights that end earlier than they otherwise would, see the video on early expiration. There was also material in the present video about copyright registrations and copyright renewals being found in research materials. To find out more about those subjects, see the video on how to research if a copyright was renewed.